Thank you so much for coming. I'm from Cape Breton, and we have another Cape Bretoner here on the sofa, Daniel, and a Newfoundlander as well, Wayne Johnston. So how many people have been to Newfoundland or Cape Breton recently? Show of hands.
Oh, great.
Okay, this is the crowd. And how many imaginatively transported themselves by reading or encountering the work of these two authors? Lovely. I think it's the same grouping. So as a Cape Bretoner, they tend to ask me when East Coasters come to the festival to do an interview. So I think I'm onto their tricks, but I'm happy to do so, and it's like coming home. So just quick bios here for the two authors. Daniel MacIvor is a Nova Scotia born. Should we substitute that with Cape Breton born?
We say Cape Breton, yeah.
Okay, we'll switch that up. Daniel MacIvor is a Cape Breton born playwright, actor, director, who has written numerous award-winning theater productions, including See Bob Run, Communion, Marion Bridge, and His Greatness. He has created, with Daniel Brooks, the solo shows House, Here Lies Henry, Monster, Cul-de-sac, This Is What Happens Next, and most recently, Who Killed Spalding Gray? In 2006, Daniel received the Governor General's Literary Award for Drama for his collection of plays, I Still Love You, available upstairs. And in 2008, he won the Seminovich Prize for Theater. He is also the recipient of the New York Obie Award and a GLAAD Award. He has recently written the screenplay for Bruce McDonald's Weirdos, an amazing film, for which he won a Canadian Screen Award for Best Original Screenplay. He is currently working on a play, New Magic Valley Funtown, which I understand he's going to read from today, with Tarragon Theatre in Toronto, and a libretto commissioned by the Canadian Opera Company for Rufus Wainwright's Hadrian. Daniel's busy. and amongst good company, Wayne Johnston was born and raised in Goulds, Newfoundland. After a brief stint in pre-med, Wayne obtained a BA in English from Memorial University. He worked as a reporter for the St. John's Daily News before deciding to devote himself full-time to writing. En route to being published, Wayne earned an MA in creative writing from the University of New Brunswick. Then he got off to a quick start. His first book, The Story of Bobby O'Malley, published when he was just 27 years old. Won the W.H. Smith Books in Canada First Novel Award for the first best novel published in the English language in Canada in that year. Subsequent books consistently received critical praise and increased public attention. The Divine Ryans was adapted to the silver screen in a production starring Academy Award-winning Pete, and the name, I'll have to Postlethwaite. Okay, and Wayne wrote the screenplay as well. Baltimore's Mansion, a memoir dealing with his grandfather, his father, and Wayne himself, was tremendously well received and won the most prestigious prize for creative nonfiction awarded in Canada, the Charles Taylor Prize. Both The Colony of Unrequited Dreams, which many of us have seen at the Grand Theatre in the adaptation by Robert Chafe and Gillian Kiley, and The Navigator of New York spent extended periods of times on bestseller lists in Canada, and they've also been published in the US, Britain, Germany, Holland, China, and Spain. Colony was identified by the Globe and Mail newspaper as one of the most 100 important Canadian books ever produced, including both fiction and nonfiction. So we've clapped already individually, but please a hand for the grouping here. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're live. So I just wanted to get started, Daniel, maybe by asking you what's brought you to London now, and what's your role at Western, which maybe the community can benefit from as well.
I'm here for the school year as a writer in residence at the University of Western Ontario, or as they like to be called, just Western, which is very confusing to people who aren't from this part of the world because they think it's in the West. So I'm at Western, and I'm also, so I do a day a week there with an office just meeting with people who have writing that they want to talk about, and also I do a day at the Public Library on Dundas Street doing the same thing. So you can make appointments through the university or through the library, and send me up to 15 pages, and we can chat about it.
So please take advantage of that. I met with Daniel the other day, and it was a wonderful conversation. So maybe just jumping off on that, why is it important for you to do these types of residencies?
Well, on one level, just that it's actually an opportunity to get paid and to write, which is not, you don't get a lot. Usually, you know, we're writing on spec, right? We're writing for money, not from money. And so this is the situation, the writer-in-residence situation, and the one at Western is especially great because it's an entire school year, which is rare, and it's also it's a program. It's been 45 years, I think. It's a great program, and I find it, so it's great for that, but I also find, actually, the thing that's been most kind of moving and edifying has been the work at the library, and to have an opportunity to come in contact with people, writers who are not necessarily ambitious to become professional writers, but people who just feel like they need to say something somehow, and to have somebody read it and talk to them about it. It's pretty special. I'm lucky.
So at very early stages in their career, or
it's nothing to do with career, right? That's the thing. That's what's so kind of beautiful about it, is that it's people who are writing because because they need to,
for expression. So a question I was thinking of, I actually rewatched Will Be Wonderful the other day, which was a movie you directed and wrote the screenplay for. It's a fantastic movie. Paul Gross is a police officer in it, and so are you, right, Daniel?
I'm a dumb police officer, yeah.
And actually, I have just a quick quote, and it's from a scene. Paul Gross is saying it, and Daniel responds, maybe not getting how profound the line is, which is funny. The line is, "If you can see where you came from, you can remember what you wanted."
If you can see where you came from, that's yeah, and it's an argument about not leaving home, staying close to home. Yeah.
So I'd like to riff on that a bit and ask you, where do you come from exactly, and can you remember what you wanted when you started writing, when you started performing?
I come from Sydney, and I spent 17 long, hard years there for a crime I did not commit.
Being born.
Yeah. I was conceived upon my father's release from Dorchester Penitentiary, but that's another story.
We'll save that for the end.
Yeah, we'll save that one, yeah. So I come from Sydney, which is, if you're going to be from Cape Breton, Sydney and Glace Bay run really close, neck and neck, to where you don't want to necessarily be from when you're from Cape Breton. But they're lovely places on their own. Anyway, and the writing thing, writing wasn't something I thought about doing. I just started doing it, and I did it when I came 12 or something. I don't know, maybe 13. I started writing, and when I was in grade 8, I don't know. I was grade 8 when my English teacher said that I had talent, and it was a word I'd never heard before, and it just seemed like the place I needed to go to be able to survive, and I just started. That was it, and so I didn't really think much about it. So,
okay, Wayne. I did some reading into your process and some of your other interviews to prepare for this. And I was thinking, a writer that really inspired me, of course, was Alistair MacLeod. Mm-hmm. And Alistair MacLeod very famously wrote in Cape Breton, overlooking the water on a cliff. And he did that at his property, I think, close by where he actually grew up. In reading some of your interviews, however, I know that you mentioned that the landscape for you in Newfoundland is quite overwhelming, and that you find it difficult to write there. And you write away from Newfoundland. So I was wondering, beyond the practical purposes of obviously you live elsewhere, but why is it an overwhelming landscape for you, and why do you find it difficult to write in Newfoundland, although the bulk of your work is about historical Newfoundland?
I don't know. Well, you know, just getting back to Alistair, Alistair was getting away from a place where he couldn't write, Windsor. Windsor's a great place. I can hear people laughing already. Windsor, yeah. I once drove to Windsor from Toronto for an event that had actually taken place the night before. It's a very long drive, let me tell you. And the drive back is even longer. I think there's a school, you know, not that we studied together, but there is a kind of writer who likes quiet solitude and complete sensory deprivation. And I'm one of those. I write in a room in the basement of my house that was soundproofed for me by the CBC. So it's like a CBC studio. It's that quiet. You know, we had a cat, but he was not allowed in there. There's nothing on the walls. My notion of a nightmarish place to write is one from which nature is observable, where there might be a twittering bird on the windowsill, because believe me, if there was, I would shoot it as fast as possible. My sister is a psychologist, and she says that I have what's called a low nuisance threshold. Tiniest little things can distract me. And so I not only do those things, but you know, write that way in that situation, but I have a white noise machine on as well. No, let me tell you, a white noise machine, if you've never tried it, aside from sleeping, this doesn't make lapping sounds of the ocean or anything like that. It's, imagine a jet engine. It's something like that. And it makes the beta waves of your brain run in a regular way. And it's extremely great, I find, for completely forgetting where you are, so that in my mind, I can get back to Newfoundland, which is what I write most about, or where I situate most of my books. And you know, if I was in Newfoundland and had Newfoundland outside the door, I found this after I published my first book and went back to Newfoundland. I found that I completely dried up as a writer. And it all kind of came to a head when a friend of my father, the friend was the mayor of this small town where I grew up, he invited me to read at the public library. I had never done anything like this, you know, in my hometown. You know, me in my hometown, I thought of as being, you know, my hometown had nothing to do with books, let's put it that way. But I said, okay, very unwisely, I said, okay. So this is what happened. The mayor came to pick me up. He brought me to the public library. I'd never even been inside it before. There was a little room in the back, not the bathroom, but just a little room. I went back there. I sat there and waited for him to do introductions, and then came out. And when I came out, and I should have anticipated this, when I came out, every single person in the audience was a character in my book. I mean, not dressed like a character in my book. They actually were the characters in my book. And it was horrifying. It was just, and they had never been to a reading in their lives. And I'd only given maybe 3 or 4. I was 28 years old. So I read with my head down, scarlet-faced, and I endured a weird question period in which, you know, I knew everybody in the audience, and I knew who their parents were. They knew I had written about them. They were asking, why did you do this? Why did you do that? I survived the reading, and I got out of there, and I drove home. But that night, about 3 in the morning, I woke with this terrible pain in the stomach. About 3 or 4 hours later, I was being operated on for appendicitis, having my appendix removed. And that's what I associate with my hometown. Yeah. I cannot write at home. I have There are many other reasons as well, and some of them I will write about, I have already written, but some of them will be in my next novel. And we'll see then how the hometown, it's the other side of the hometown, is my wife's hometown, which is Cape Town, South Africa. Totally different kettle of fish, but we'll see.
So I imagine, Daniel, in taking up these residencies and workshopping a lot of theater, that you can probably write just about anywhere. Would that be right?
Yeah, because I write for the voice. I'm writing something to be spoken, so I speak it. It's noisy where I write. You would not want to write next door to me.
I speak every word I write out loud, over and over and over again.
And I do a lot of pacing as well. I pace probably equal to sitting, so I need space. But I don't. You know, it's odd. I let nature kind of become a white noise for me, or I'll even sometimes play music, but I have to play it like into the over and over and over to the point where it just becomes a kind of noise. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think about that, about being in a soundproof room. I might be wonderful. I don't know, but I find that I can write in some. I've been able to write in cafes even sometimes. But I think it has to do with the fact that I'm not writing prose. I think it makes a difference because I'm writing for noise to be made.
And anticipating an audience interacting with the material.
Yeah, that it's incredibly a lot of vibration around it. Yeah.
So Wayne, I wanted to ask you about Colony, the Colony of Unrequited Dreams. Again, I said in the intro that a lot of us did see it at the Grand Theatre, and I think you were in attendance for the opening with Gillian Kiley and Robert Chafe as well.
I was, yeah.
So I think on that particular run, it was at Neptune Theatre, it was at Grand Theatre, and it was at the National Arts Centre. Which suggests to me that it's moved from the margins to the center, if we could call it that. As I understand, it wasn't always accepted and was quite controversial and lit up a big controversy on Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So I'd love if you could recall some of that.
Tell us where you would. Yeah.
Tell us where it is now, and what was the process of seeing it at the National Arts Centre to move from one space to center stage, so to speak.
Well, you know, opening night in St. John's, let me back up a bit. When it was optioned by Robert Chafe, who's a St. John's playwright, he asked me if I wanted to have anything to do with the adaptation. And I had, by this time, written some screenplays, adapted a couple of my own books. So I knew what that process was like, but I loved the theater. But I had never written for the theater. And I had this feeling about the theater that if I knew what was pulling the strings, it would spoil the theater for me. And I've written in so many different genres, I wanted there to be one left that I could suspend my disbelief about and just be an audience member. So I said to Robert, I trust you, because I'd seen a couple of his plays. I said, I'll see you on opening night. And I honestly thought that the odds of this play being made were pretty slim because of the size of the book. A 600-page book is not often how a play begins. You know, you have that elemental space, you know, usually 4 or 5 characters. In the case of Colony, there's 13. So I wasn't sure it'd even be made. On opening night in St. John's, a different person played Sheila Fielding than you guys saw. Astrid Van Weren, who is now with Come From Away on Broadway, played Sheila Fielding on the first night in a very different way than Carmen Grant played her in London. They're both brilliant actresses, but I preferred Carmen's Sheila Fielding. But I remember, you know, so I haven't read the script, I haven't met the actors, I haven't even seen them. I don't know what their faces look like, I haven't seen photographs, anything. I'm introduced beforehand to the audience. It's in St. John's, the Arts and Culture Center, and the curtain goes up, and instead of, you know, beginning where my book begins, Sheila Fielding is standing stage left, and she begins a monologue, just as she does in the play that you saw. And what happened was that it brought me back. It was like a Proustian moment, you know, at the start of Remembrance of Things Past, where he eats the cake, and it brings him back to a moment in childhood. Like, literally, he feels exactly as he did. Well, I felt exactly as I did when I wrote the words that she was saying. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of emotion, and tears were streaming down my face. And people were, you know, they could hear me crying. And they thought, God, it's not that bad, you know. But no, it was a wonderful thing. And I'll tell you very quickly, one reason that it was wonderful, and that is, I don't know if you've ever heard of a country song called I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool. Well, I was the author of The Colony of Unrequited Dreams when to be the author of The Colony of Unrequited Dreams was not cool. In Newfoundland, had I lived there, I would have been run out of town on a rail, to say the least. I mean, I got death threats. I had people found my unlisted number and left all sorts of messages on my machine. All kinds of horrible things happened. And then the book got the cover of the New York Times book review, and everybody changed their minds, which is a very Canadian thing, I think. You know?
And in large part, that was because you mixed history and fiction in and around the character of Joey Smallwood, which brought Newfoundland into the Confederation.
Yeah, well, he claimed that he was responsible for that. I don't think so. In the sense that he claimed to be the only living father of Confederation. I think the only living father of Confederation was Whitehall in England, because they didn't want to have to support Newfoundland anymore. So they moved hell and high water to get rid of Newfoundland. And, you know, I'm not saying they had a choice, really, because it was costing a lot of money, and it's still costing Newfoundland a lot of money to keep Newfoundland going. But yeah, I did mix history and fiction, and was vilified for it. People went on the radio and said that an entire generation of Newfoundlanders was going to be miseducated because of my book. And I went on the radio and I said, well, you know, on the cover of the book it says a novel. And if you look up the word a novel, you will see that it means an extended work of prose fiction. And if you're still lost, look up the word fiction, and that means that which is not true. But it wasn't until John Crosby came on the radio one day. The book had been out 18 months by now, and Crosby, who was kind of an arch villain in terms of Smallwood's eyes, they were political enemies, and this was way after they both had retired. Crosby said, "Look," he was talking to a CBC interview. He said, "Look, the book paints a sympathetic portrait of Joey Smallwood, so it goes without saying that it must be fiction."
So Daniel, in one of your recent plays, you actually, I don't know if you'd mix history and fiction, but you discussed a historical figure, obviously, in Spalding Gray. So the play was Who Killed Spalding Gray? Very touching, very moving play. Maybe you could talk a little bit about who Spalding Gray was, how he inspired this, and was it met with any resistance or controversy that you were taking up the final days of his tragic life?
Spalding Gray was a monologist. It's monologist, but I think monologist sounds like you need a degree in it, so I like monologist. He did monologues. He told stories of his life. He was New York based, and if you don't know anyway, people who know who Spalding Gray is know a lot about him. But anyway, so Spalding Gray tragically killed himself in 2004 by jumping off the Staten Island ferry. So I tour internationally with solo work, and I used to travel just behind him often, and so people would talk about how my work reminded them of his work, but his work, he sat at a table and told stories of his life, and I thought I was doing this sort of tour de force-ian kind of multi-character stuff, and I felt a bit insulted that they were comparing us.
And famously with a very spare setting.
A table and a glass of water, and I had like lights and sound, but of course when I really thought about it, I really was just hiding myself behind all this noise, and it was really where they were just stories of my life that I put in other voices. Anyway, so I won't get into the whole reason for it, but I did do this play that's based partly on Spalding Gray and partly on the nature of storytelling and truth and what's true and what are lies and why we tell stories and depression. And I did his widow, Kathy, read the material, and she didn't necessarily throw her support behind it, but she didn't stop us either. But because the play has posits a notion about what happens to people who kill themselves, and which Kathy doesn't agree with, which is fine. And so we had not really resistance, but we couldn't produce it in New York because there's still a lot of pain about Spalding's death in New York, and so we didn't go in that territory. But it's not really, if you see it, it's actually just been published this week, and I don't know what reading it would be like, but certainly if you see it, it's about a lot more than Spalding.
Of course. I think Helena Bonham Carter makes an appearance.
Helena Bonham Carter shows up because she was in Big Fish, which was the film that he saw. He took his son to see Big Fish the day he died, and there's also this weird connection with Big Fish because Loudon Wainwright is in Big Fish, and Loudon Wainwright was a really close friend of Spalding's, and he actually read to him in the hospital because he was hospitalized a number of times. And then I'm actually working with Loudon's son, Rufus, anyway, there's this crazy, all these strange connections exist.
Wonderful. So we're going to ask Daniel to actually take the podium, and he'll share some of his newest work with you.
This is the first few moments, first, I don't know, 10 minutes. Can I close this? Can I close this laptop? Yeah. This is like the first 10 minutes, I guess, of this play called New Magic Valley Funtown. New Magic Valley Funtown, which is a play that we're developing at the Tarragon Theater, and we'll be doing, hopefully in the season after next, we'll see how things go. I don't think, you've read it, right? Do I need to set it up?
I think maybe this, in terms of the setting, okay.
Yeah. So it's set in all the two characters you meet are Dougie and Cheryl, who are an estranged husband and wife who are still pretty friendly. So it's outside the city limits outside Sydney, and in Dougie's mobile home, which a double wide, we call that. So this is the first scene. The trailer is pristine, scrubbed, and vacuumed. There's a sense that even at the worst of times, an OCD neatness prevails. Surfaces are not cluttered, but there are a few knickknacks and half a dozen framed photographs, some sports memorabilia on the walls, New York Yankees and Toronto Maple Leafs. We heard Dougie struggle with his key in the door lock. His hands and arms are full with 3 or 4 plastic grocery bags, a couple of cases of beer, a paper bag containing a bottle of wine, and along with all this, he holds a large takeout coffee in one hand. At first, Dougie is is hidden behind this pile of party supplies as he slowly makes his way into the trailer. He manages to get through the door without dropping anything, and before stepping in the trailer, he kicks off his shoes on a mat by the door, so this is a very impressive balancing act. He makes an effort to keep the shoes on the mat, even though this makes his job that much more difficult. He succeeds. Now de-shoed, he makes his way toward the kitchen counter where he carefully sets down his load. He takes a breath. Takes a sip of coffee. He notices that his shoes are not perfectly lined up on the mat. As he moves to the mat to correct this, the bag containing the bottle of wine tips over and falls to the floor with a dull smash. No! Wine seeps out of the bag all over the kitchen floor. Dougie tries to scoop up the bag. Wine now pours out. No, 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 no! Dougie manages to get the bag into the sink. He's made a mess on the floor. No, 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 no! Goddamn, 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 goddamn! Dougie digs under the sink for paper towels. There's only the end of a roll and a few rags. As he moves around the room, we notice that he has some discomfort getting up or getting down or standing up. No, 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 fuckers, fuckers, fuckers. Dougie takes off his shirt, he's wearing an undershirt, to mop up the wine. Goddamn, goddamn, goddamn! As he rushes back to the sink with his sopping shirt, he bumps into the counter and knocks over his coffee. It hits the floor, gushing everywhere. No! He is silent a moment as he surveys the mess. He then explodes. Fuckers! He picks up one of his shoes and yells at it. Fuckers! He throws his shoe across the room. Fuckers! The shoe hits the wall with a loud thud. Dougie immediately regrets this action. He rushes across the room to survey the damage on the wall. There's a mark there. No, 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 no! Dougie collapses into a chair, his head in his hands. He seems to weep a moment. Dougie gets himself together. He takes a couple of deep breaths. He goes to his prominently displayed boombox and he puts on a nearby CD, an upbeat song from his high school days, maybe Steve Winwood's Higher Love. This pulls him out of his mood. He dances a bit. He sings along. He moves the frame poster from its spot on the wall and rehangs it to cover the mark that he's made. He finishes cleaning up as best he can. He goes into the bathroom to take a shower. The song continues. After a few moments, Cheryl is at the door. It's locked. Dougie! 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 Cheryl pushes the small window in the door open and moves the screen over. She snakes her arm through the opening and unlocks the door. She enters. She's carrying a paper bag from the grocery store containing a huge package of paper towels. Cheryl turns off the music. Dougie! She hears the shower running. She takes off her shoes and places them on the mat. She notices the floor is damp. What in God's green? Cheryl goes to the sink. Dougie, what's this mess? She sees the bag with a broken bottle in the sink. Dougie, who are you buying wine for? Oh my God. She opens the package of paper towels and begins wiping up the damp spots on the floor. She calls off. Who are you buying wine for? Nobody's going to drink wine. Sandy's not drinking. I can't imagine Sharky drinks wine. I don't remember him drinking wine. All we ever drank was beer and rum from what I remember. Did Sandy not tell you that she's not drinking? You don't need to be buying wine for Sandy. She might not even come tonight. She's in a mood, quiet and mean. That's the meanest kind of mean there is, quiet mean. The only thing she said to me all afternoon was, why do you even bother dyeing your hair anymore? Cheryl continues speaking. When she finishes cleaning up the floor, she lights a cigarette. Finally, she opens a cupboard that has one shelf mostly filled with medications, and she finds a particular bottle and counts how many pills there are in the bottle. Buddy Walsh asked how you were doing. Him and Claire were up at Tim's when I took Brenda in for a coffee this morning. Tim's at Grand Lake, not the mall. Tim's all the same to me, though. Brenda likes the Grand Lake. Tim's better. She says they put more nutmeg in their coffee there. I wouldn't know about any of that. You know about that stuff. That's your business, coffee. I tried their tea, but I just can't see to put milk in with the bag. Something like you do camping, I think. Need my teapot, thank you. But Buddy Walsh asked after you. I thought that was nice. Haven't had a mayor like Buddy Walsh around here in a while. It's nice that he thinks of his people. He was so good to me at the city, and who was I? And you too, all the boys in the yard, all of us in the office. He knew all of our names. Every summer he'd have that barbecue for the whole staff. This new rig, though, God, just like the rest of them, politicians. Certainly not our best and brightest, eh? Certainly not our best and brightest called that line of work anymore. I think back to the Kennedys and all that in those days, Camelot and Jackie O and everything. It was like a storybook, regal or higher than regular life. Or what's his name? Slim Ryan was mayor when we were kids. They were more, I don't know what you say, what, more heroic or something. These ones now, ever since Mayor Walsh has been all downhill in this rig. God, Brenda says he's got the young one knocked up and he's building her a house out on the point. And nobody's batting an eye, not even his wife. I feel so bad for her. I wonder if she knows everybody knows. That's what you get when you marry a politician, getting away with murder now, all of them though. Oh, I don't know. Maybe they always knew, but I don't know. Maybe they always did the same thing. I don't know. I'd rather not know, to tell you the truth. I'd just rather not know. She hears the shower stop. She quietly puts the pills back and closes the cupboard.
Dougie, did Sandy not tell you that she's not drinking? Dougie comes out of the bathroom wet from the shower. He has a towel around his waist. We're not smoking inside, Cheryl. Jesus, put that out. She puts it out. Oh my God, it's a couple of puffs. It took me 2 days to air the place out. Oh, I know. That's what the deck's for. Well, what if Charky smokes? Oh my God, Cheryl, Charky doesn't smoke. How do you know? He's a runner. He's not a runner. He is. Did you see his Facebook? Well, there was pictures of him in a race. That doesn't mean anything. Facebook's all lies. Charky's not a liar. You don't know that. You haven't seen him in 30 years. No, he was here that summer that time. All right, 25 years then. Cheryl, I know him since we were this high. All right, I know. I knew him too. You know him to be a liar? Because I never did. No. So? All right. Buddy Walsh, that's how you were doing. And I suppose you told him. I told him you were doing good. Yeah, and how many stitches I had and which prescriptions I'm on and the astrological sign of my oncologist. I don't talk about you like that. Oh, you don't talk about me like that. I don't talk about you like that. You talk about me like that, Brenda. I heard you. Oh, well, to Brenda, she's family. She's not my family. Oh, for God's sake. What happened here with all this mess? Nothing. I asked you to pick up paper towels, and I did. 2 days ago, I got them. They're here. It's clean. I'm just saying I needed them before. Well, they're here now. If you don't want to do something, just tell me you don't want to do it. It's not that I didn't want to do it. It's just I didn't get a chance till now. I would have done it myself, but you said you were doing it. I did it. It's done. It's all cleaned up. You're welcome. I just want things to be nice. That's all. Are you getting ready already? I'm getting me cleaned up so I can get to the rest of it. You put some weight back on. Oh, thank you very much, Cheryl. That's good, I mean. That's good. Dougie turns to go back to the bathroom, and we see that he has a huge scar running across his torso. How's the pain? Why are you asking me that? Am I not supposed to ask? Were you snooping, Cheryl? No, don't snoop, Cheryl. I don't. Are you taking your pain pills? That's all I'm asking. You tell me you're the snoop. So you're not then. I don't like those pills. They help the healing too. It's not just the pain. I'm having a drink tonight, Cheryl. I know, but leave it. Well, was the mall busy? Saturday's crazy up there. Where's the macaroni and cheese? Oh, God. I knew you'd forget it. I'll go back. Sandy's bringing it. You knew I forgot it. I know you well, Cheryl. Sandy told you she's bringing it. Yeah. So you knew I forgot it. Yeah. But you asked me where it was anyway. I knew you'd forget it. So that's pretty much just straight out lying. You know that, right? What's lying? Knowing I forgot it and asking me if I did. That's not lying. Well, what is it then? Proving a point. And what's your point? How well I know you, Cheryl. Oh, Dougie, you'd be surprised. I have worlds inside me you could never imagine. Is that so? It is. Aren't you fancy? You're the big deal, aren't you? Next thing you know, you'll be going on a cruise. Oh, God, a floating outhouse. No, thank you. Floating outhouse, that's about the size of it. Who are you buying wine for? Sandy. Sandy's not drinking. That's not what you told me. She's not. She might not even come tonight. That's not what you told me. When? We were texting about the macaroni just before. There she is now. What? Oh, God. Oh, great. She's in a mood. The only problem you and Sandy have is you're too much alike. Oh, well, thank you, Dougie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Wayne, you want to read from your new book, First Snow, Last Light?
Well, so I'll set it up first. I'm not sure if I should set it up first or sort of set it up last. I actually didn't know I was going to be reading, but that's okay because so far I've been on a tour with this book since August 24th, and so far I've had Thanksgiving off. I got home for Thanksgiving. In other words, otherwise, basically, I've been on a tour ever since. And one of the things I've noticed is that it's almost impossible to read this book to people who haven't read it already without giving things away. It's one of those kinds of books that there are sort of spoilers on every page lurking beneath the surface, and it's like jumping your way from one landmine to another, trying to read it. So I'll read the very beginning, which shouldn't have any spoilers in it if you think about it. But for anybody who's halfway through the book, there actually might be, depending on how I read it. This book, just like Colony of Unrequited Dreams, First Snow, Last Light, has as its germ, the germ of its protagonist, who is kind of an antagonist to Sheila Fielding in the same way that Smallwood was. It has an actual Newfoundlander who some people have thought of as being completely over the top. That's what was said to me about Newfoundland characters in general. Why are they so over the top? And my answer, and I get this often, is, you know, they're not over the top. They're not considered over the top in Newfoundland anyway. I said I would only consider them to be over the top if Everest is the top. In that case, you know, maybe they're over the top. But this character is a guy, he's not in the book, named Jeff Sterling, but if any of you are from Newfoundland, you might know who Jeff Sterling was. Around the same time that Smallwood was bringing Confederation to Newfoundland, Newfoundland to Canada, let's put it that way, this guy was trying to sell the idea of Newfoundland joining the United States. And it didn't fly, it didn't work, so he went off to the US and kind of educated himself. He went on a track scholarship to the University of Tampa, put himself through school hunting alligators. This is actually true. And this is just the minor part. This is where his life is just beginning to get odd. He came back to Newfoundland and he met Smallwood just as Smallwood's umpteenth newspaper had failed. Like Smallwood described himself, and I described him in Colony of Unrequited Dreams, as a serial failure before he became Premier of Newfoundland. He failed at everything he touched. He had the reverse Midas touch. So he had 10 tons of newsprint to sell. And he put an ad in the paper saying he wanted to sell it. So Jeff Sterling sought him out and said he wanted to buy it. And Smallwood said, why? Sterling said, I would like to start up a tabloid magazine in Newfoundland like the ones that I've seen in New York. And Smallwood said, something like that won't last 6 weeks in Newfoundland. So they conducted the transaction, and Jeff Sterling started up what is still today, that's 68 years later, known as the Newfoundland Herald. And the first edition of the Newfoundland Herald featured a sea monster, a giant sea monster, that came up and swallowed an entire island off the coast of Newfoundland. And it had a story about 2 sons of Adolf Hitler who were preparing, while living in Argentina, to resurrect the Third Reich. Now, in Newfoundland newspapers up to this point, anything that was written was not necessarily taken as true, but it was always taken as political and having a point, or religious. A newspaper could be, affiliated with a church or a political party. So most people who read this Newfoundland Herald stories, they took them as being the absolute truth. And so there was an absolute panic in St. John's about a giant sea serpent and the return of the Third Reich. And it was like Orson Welles, the aliens are coming, what should we do? And everybody bought the Herald as a kind of answer to what we should do. It must be in there. People talked about it. And the thing took off, and that's how Jeff Sterling got started. He had the first perm ever in Newfoundland. That's what he said. Okay. Now he started up his television station, just like the guy in the book does. He started up the TV station, but because there was no competition, there was no CBC. He was NTV, a division of CJON or CTV at the time. He could do whatever he wanted with his TV station. So he decided that what he would do was he would run it like a TV station until he felt like preempting whatever programming was happening and just coming on to, free associate about whatever he felt like talking about. So on Friday nights, we would be staying up waiting for the, Friday night monster movie to come on. We'd be kids with our bags of chips and pop and everything else, waiting, and it would come on, and we'd be getting into Godzilla stamping all over some Japanese city. And then this voice would come on and it would say, "Programming is now preempted so that we may bring you," and it was essentially yet another episode of Jeff Sterling Presents. And on would come this big permed head. And he would start free associating about anything he wanted to talk about. And he was a conspiracy theorist. We didn't even know what a conspiracy theorist was, but he was a conspiracy theorist. He believed in every conspiracy theory you could possibly imagine. And the one that was closest to his heart for some reason was that, there had been 2 shooters at the grassy knoll the day JFK was assassinated. Now, he looked into this because he had money. He looked into this and spent an enormous amount of money on it. So what he would do late at night and sometimes on Sunday mornings in Newfoundland is he would play unedited, so he would actually show the gruesome parts, the Zapruder film over and over on Sunday morning television. Over and over again, the motorcade would come down Elm Street, and Kennedy's head would be blown to pieces, and then he would reverse the shot, and he'd say, "Now see the way Kennedy's head moves? You can tell there's another shooter." And we were there 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old watching this, and wondering why we were watching it, knowing the only other people watching were probably fishermen from around the bay somewhere. Other mornings, he had Jonathan Livingston Seagull flying around, and he would recite the text of Jonathan Livingston Seagull over the television set. So the piece de resistance, and I'm starting to realize that I'm not going to read today. I'll tell you how this all hooks up. The piece de resistance came once again with Smallwood. After Smallwood's really tempestuous fall from power, it was an extraordinary 2 years, he and Jeff Sterling developed quite a fast friendship. And Smallwood often appeared with Sterling on Newfoundland TV. They would often appear Sunday mornings, again preempting whatever program was supposed to be on. And they would talk about Smallwood's early days as a socialist in New York, Jeff's early days as an entrepreneur in New York and in Newfoundland. And they would just go on like this for hours, and people would watch a bit and they'd go away and they'd come back and they'd still be there. And you would listen some more, and it was just a kind of conversation, never ending, that you could drop in on from time to time. Then Jeff had an idea, and he got Smallwood to help him with it. He said, "Joe," and that's what he called him, not Joey. He said, "Joe, I think between the two of us, we could get an audience with Fidel Castro. And wouldn't that be great if we could do that?" And Smallwood was a huge fan of Castro. Castro was the dictator of a small island. It was typecasting. So Smallwood wrote, as only Smallwood could, because he would never give up on an idea. He wrote letter after letter after letter to Fidel Castro, and no answer, no answer, no answer, until finally, I think just because of the pestering, he came back and he said, "Yep, okay, we're going to do it." So they went to Cuba, and for 26 hours, they sat in an un-air-conditioned television studio waiting for Fidel to show up. It was so hot they took off all their clothes except for their boxer shorts and t-shirts. And Fidel never showed up. And finally the guy came and he said, "I'm sorry, the president has a country to run." And that was the end of the idea. They went home and they made a movie out of it called Waiting for Fidel.
So part of my role here is to keep time, and we have another session coming up. I just wanted to thank Wayne for filling in a lot of the gaps, which I think help us actually understand the colony and the controversy that surrounds it. I wanted to thank Daniel for a wonderful reading, and we look forward to the new play coming out. Please, your applause for Wayne Johnston and Daniel MacIvor.